Welcome, we hope you enjoy your stay here with Gale of Tales.
Blood and Stone. Origin. Written by Lena Simone. Part 1. Ghost of a Life. Delaney sat at her desk, absently tapping a pen against a stack of half-finished paperwork. The usual humming of low conversations, and the sharp trill of phones in the office had fallen into a rare and heavy silence. Only the glow of her computer screen remained, casting a pale light across the desk, and giving the sterile room she had inhabited for the past 6 years an eerie, almost spectral sheen. She wore her standard uniform, dark jeans, a fitted black tee, and a pair of worn brown leather boots that had molded to her feet over time. Her dark, curly hair was twisted into a loose bun at the nape of her neck, with a few defiant strands falling forward to frame her face. The cool blue light of the screen softened the intensity of her sharp green eyes, and warmed against the golden hue of her skin. With a quiet sigh, she shifted in her chair and surveyed the room. She took in the gray cubicle walls, the coffee pot that turned every last cup bitter, and the flickering fluorescent lights overhead. The air carried that same tired scent of old paper and synthetic citrus, a smell she now instinctively associated with monotony. They were all unchanged, all uninspiring. This wasn't the life she had imagined when she completed her master's in history. Back then, she dreamed of unearthing artifacts, curating exhibits in grand museums, and writing books that made people fall in love with the past. Instead, she found herself archiving corporate documents, and preserving records no one would ever read. Her days began to dissolve into a routine that felt increasingly claustrophobic and stale. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, stilled above the final draft of her resignation email. She had rewritten it more times than she could count. It was not angry or melodramatic. She didn't plan on slamming doors, or any dramatic declarations, just a quiet departure with a deliberate note stating it was time. It was time to search for something that stirred her soul, something that didn't leave her hollow by the end of each day. She reached for the small cardboard box she had packed with the few items she cared enough to take. She took a framed photo, her favorite coffee mug, and the little plant she'd managed to keep alive. As she gently closed the lid, her thoughts turned to the people she'd be leaving behind. She would probably miss Jonah the most. His sarcasm and his fascination with obscure conspiracies had often brightened even her most worst days. Then there was Carmen, basically the office den mother. She had always been ready with a snack, a hug, or just the right words. But there were others who made this decision feel not just right, but necessary. People like Trisha, who wielded gossip like a weapon and offered backhanded compliments with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Delaney had mastered the art of the nod and smile just to survive those interactions. Now, she wouldn't have to anymore. She closed her laptop with a quiet finality, watching as the screen went dark, signifying the end of a chapter. A strange, steady calm settled over her. The uncertainty ahead was scary, but there was also something quietly electrifying. It was uncharted territory. There was hope in the unknown, a hope she hadn't felt in a long time. With one last glance at the gray, humming office, she picked up her box, her keys, and walked out the door towards something unknown. When Delaney stepped into her apartment for the last time, the silence was startling. Most of her belongings were already packed into her car. The once colorful, cluttered, and alive space now felt like a mausoleum of her former self. Bare walls, empty bookshelves, and the hollow echo of her footsteps reminded her she was already half gone. A few boxes remained stacked neatly by the door, and she began carrying them out one at a time. As she moved, a question crept in like a draft. I hope I'm doing the right thing. With just one box left, she paused. Instead of lifting it, she sat down on the living room floor. This had been her sanctuary for the last 3 years. Her quiet refuge from long days, a place to sketch, read, and reflect in peace. It had seen her at her best, her loneliest, and every shade in between. Here, she'd wrestled often with the elusive shape of happiness. It didn't feel right to leave without a proper goodbye. She reached into her bag and pulled out a half-eaten ham and cheese croissant she hadn't finished for lunch. She stared at it for a long moment, then let out a soft, half laugh. One last dinner then, she murmured. She ate slowly, her eyes tracing the pale outlines on the walls where her artwork once hung, ghosts of a life she both loved and hated. Am I making the right choice? The thought returned, more persistent now, like a tide pressing inward. She wanted happiness, but what did that even look like? A job she loved? A rekindled passion? Or had she just abandoned the only form of stability she had left? When she finished the croissant, she brushed the crumbs from her lap, stood, and picked up the last box. Doubt still lingered, but the choice had been made. The wheels were already turning. Outside, she tucked the box into the trunk, then slid into the driver's seat and gripped the steering wheel with both hands. She inhaled slowly, a deep and grounding breath, then started the engine, letting the familiar hum soothe her. She was heading back to her childhood home, but it didn't feel like a retreat. It felt like a leap. Like she was standing at the edge and trusting that the wind might carry her. It was a typical May evening in the city. A faint chill still lingered in the air. The streets buzzed with life, restaurants brimming with laughter, headlights darting across the wet pavement like restless spirits. She moved through it all, tracing the well-worn path from Chelsea to Queens. The sounds of the city slowly faded behind her, giving way to quieter streets, tree-lined and familiar. As she crossed the bridge, she glanced in the rearview mirror. Manhattan's skyline gleamed in the distance, lit like a memory. When she finally pulled into her parents' driveway, the porch light was on, casting a warm circle across the steps. Her father, Theo, stood waiting with a smile, his arms open. His skin was deep and warm-toned, textured with fine lines that mapped decades of smiles, worry, and resilience. His hair was close-cropped, and graying at the temples, and a salt and pepper beard framed his face. It was neatly kept but not overly trimmed, the kind that made him look both wise and kind. His glasses rested comfortably on his nose, catching the porch light in soft glints as he smiled. He looked like someone you'd lean on without needing to explain why. Delaney barely had time to close the car door before he folded her into a hug. "You're home," he whispered. A moment later, her younger brother Ezra appeared to help her unload the car. He was a mirror of their father in his younger years. Tall and broad-shouldered, with a relaxed but confident grin. His brown eyes always sparkled with mischief, as if always on the verge of a joke. His hair was thick and curly, cropped on the sides but loose hanging coils on top that defied gravity and added an effortless cool to his look. "Come on," he said, already reaching for a box. "Let's get this stuff inside." As she made her way to her bedroom, she wondered how different it would feel. She stepped in and took in the space. The deep blue walls of her old bedroom wore the past like a second skin. Faded posters of grunge bands clung to them, corners curling, and held up by strips of yellowed tape that somehow survived the years. Her eyes landed on Kurt Cobain, still one of her favorite posters of him. She let out a soft laugh. I know, who would have thought, right?" she said to the poster, half smiling like he might answer back. The dresser, once overflowing with makeup, jewelry, and old concert ticket stubs, was nearly bare now. Now, there was just a few things her mom had thoughtfully left out to make the room feel like hers again. She placed the box she was carrying on her desk and looked around. Other boxes were already piled near the closet, and at the foot of her bed. The room looked like puzzle pieces of a life in transition, not quite unpacked but no longer packed away either. Delaney let her arms drop to her sides, exhaled, and gave the room a small nod. "So, here we are." Stepping out, she made her way down the narrow hallway, her footsteps muted by the soft carpet beneath her. The house had changed in subtle ways. The dark wood panels, heavy drapes and mint green carpet she remembered had been replaced by light-colored walls and sleek hardwood floors. It was brighter now. She paused at the top of the stairs as a quiet thought surfaced in her mind. What better way to move forward than to move 2 steps back? Said no one ever. She continued down the stairs and once at the bottom, she stopped again and took in the space. The biggest difference wasn't the furniture or the paint, it was the silence. Her childhood home used to echo with laughter, conversation, the constant hum of a full house. Now, the stillness settled like a soft blanket over everything. The quiet nudged a memory loose. She smiled as it surfaced. She and her younger sister True, crouched under the dining table on Christmas Eve, giggling and trying to stay awake long enough to catch Santa. They were convinced that since their house didn't have a chimney, he'd have no choice but to use the front door. Obviously. She chuckled, rolling her eyes at her younger self, but then she paused. Her smile faded as she felt there was something more tucked into that moment, something she hadn't noticed before. A flicker of unease, a feeling she hadn't remembered until now. She raised an eyebrow, trying to place it, but let the thought go with a small shrug. Maybe it was just nerves. Adjusting to change always came with a little tension. That's when she caught the scent of cinnamon and vanilla, winding through the air like a ribbon. The familiar smell wrapped around her, comforting and warm, a gentle reminder that she was home. She'd spent the whole drive wondering if it would still feel the same, if the walls would welcome her back, or just remind her of how much time had passed. But now, standing in the soft glow of the dining room with voices drifting in from the kitchen, Delaney finally let herself breathe. It felt like home. Soft footsteps padded down the hall. A second later, True strutted in barefoot, a smug grin already in place. She wore wide-legged joggers and an oversized hoodie, with her sleeves shoved up like she was about to roll into a cooking show. "Look who finally made it back from the big city," True announced, striking a dramatic pose. Delaney turned, raising her eyebrow. Prepare to be wowed. True held out her left arm like she was revealing a secret weapon. Just above her wrist, delicate lines of a small starfish tattoo curved into view. Delaney blinked. "No way, you actually did it." "Finally," True said, grinning like a kid. She wiggled her fingers. "Easy took me. I figured it was time." Delaney stepped closer, gently tracing the ink. "Wow, I'm proud of you." "You should be. I've been talking about this forever." "Since you were, like, 7? Delaney laughed. "When you swore you'd swim with dolphins and live on the beach forever?" "No questions allowed." "Exactly," True beamed. "And now I've got permanent proof that I once had dreams." She let out a playful sigh and flopped into a chair. "Too bad I got pulled into adulthood with the rest of you boring people." Delaney laughed. "You? Please, you're still chasing the dream." "Well, halfway there." True flexed her arm. "All that's left is actually swimming with a dolphin and fulfilling my childhood prophecy." "You're so dramatic," Delaney grinned. "Where's Mom, anyway?" Before True could answer, Ezra strolled in from the kitchen. "Look who's back," he said with a smirk. "The prodigal daughter graces us with her presence." Delaney rolled her eyes. "Here we go." "Just giving you a proper welcome," Ezra said, arms wide. "Back to the thrilling world of suburban boredom." "Wow, so warm and heartfelt," True said, deadpan. "She hasn't even unpacked yet." Ezra shrugged. "Fine, welcome back to the land of suburban excellence." Delaney laughed. "Relax. It's Queens, not the Hamptons." Ezra flopped into a dining chair, lounging like he owned the place. Details. Anyway, since we're all assembled here like it's some kind of nerd council, I've got an announcement." "Ezra," True groaned. "If this is about your—" "It is," Ezra said, cutting her off, narrowing his eyes, and pointing his apple at her like a weapon. He turned to Delaney with mock seriousness. "I've got a Warzone tournament coming up." Delaney raised an eyebrow. "Wait, like Call of Duty?" Ezra sat up straighter. "First off, it's COD. We talked about this," he said, pointing to Delaney. "And yup, trios, cash prize. It's serious." True blinked. "How serious are we talking? Like quit your job, or buy a new headset?" Ezra smirked. "Top 3 gets a payout. Not retirement money, but like, definitely flex on your siblings kind of money." Delaney nodded. "I'm rooting for you." "As you should," Ezra said, clearly puffed up. "My KD is clean, I've got rotations down, and our comms are tight." True rolled her eyes. "I don't know what any of that means. I do know he's literally been practicing like it's boot camp. I walked in yesterday and he was screaming to literally no one." "Practice makes perfect. Some of us still have ambition," Ezra said with mock pride. "You wouldn't understand." Delaney smirked. "Just don't let some 12-year-old ruin your whole ego." Ezra groaned. "Why does everyone think the 12-year-olds are the ones to beat?" "Because they are," Delaney and True said in unison. Ezra threw his arms up, and then pointed back and forth between his sisters. "I'm the twin, so enough of that." Delaney leaned against the wall, grinning. Anyway, I'm just trying to settle in for now. Then I'll start job hunting. True tilted her head. You got anything in mind, or just browsing the chaos? Delaney let out a breath, fingers tapping the wall. Honestly, I want something that doesn't suck the life out of me. Something that actually feels worth it. Ezra, for once, didn't joke. He nodded. That makes sense. You did the corporate thing. It drained you. Time to find something that actually fits. Delaney raised a brow. Look at you being emotionally aware. Who are you, and what have you done with our brother? Ezra gave a lazy shrug. I contain multitudes. True grinned and squeezed Delaney's hand. You'll find it. You're too smart not to. And while you're figuring it out, Ezra added, you get to chill with us. Honestly, we're the real prize. Delaney laughed. Wow, truly blessed. Their voices blended again, overlapping like they always had, banter, half-jokes, warmth underneath it all. And while the pressure hadn't vanished, Delaney felt something loosen in her chest. Back in her room, she struck a match, and lit the lavender candle her mom had left on the dresser. The scent was instant comfort, soft and familiar. She wandered over to the wooden desk by the window, brushing her fingers across the surface. She thought of the late nights she'd spent there studying, sketching, and looking out the window daydreaming about a future with so many plans. Well, she said aloud as she traced the shape of a square on the desk with her finger, back at one. The wave of nostalgia that washed over her was complicated. It was warm and heavy, part comfort, part weight pressing down on her chest. Her eyes landed on the stack of boxes in the corner. All right, she muttered, mostly to herself. Might as well get started. She knelt down beside the first box and opened it. Inside were random personal things she tossed in last minute, photo albums, old notebooks, and sketch pads that were smudged with charcoal and fingerprints. Some of the pages were full of unfinished drawings, half-formed thoughts, and old ideas she barely remembered having. She picked up one pad, its corners worn soft from years of use, and ran her thumb along the edge, and then she set it aside. Her hand landed on something tucked near the bottom, a small wooden box. Oh, my jewelry, she said to herself. She leaned further into the box to pick it up carefully, but the moment she touched it, something in her shifted. She felt a weird sense of déjà vu, but it was like a flicker of memory she couldn't quite catch. She froze, the box resting in her hands. She sat back, staring at the floor. First the memory with True, now déjà vu? But how can I have déjà vu of something I can't even remember? And what's my jewelry box have to do with it? She looked at the desk by the window, and then back at the box in her hand. Start at one, she said once more aloud. She closed her eyes and tried to envision that night again. It was strange. She could recall so much, the twinkly Christmas lights reflecting on the floor, the warmth of True curled up beside her under the table, how quiet the house had been that night. She could even remember the sound of her breathing, quick and shallow. And the feeling of her small fingers gripping something rough. Maybe a toy? Then, nothing, like the tape just stopped. Cut to black. It didn't feel like something she'd forgotten. It felt like her brain was keeping it from her. But something inside felt like it was trying to push back. Delaney rubbed her temples, trying to shake off the feeling pressing in at the edges. She set the wooden box aside and made herself keep unpacking. She put books onto shelves, folded clothes, placed them in drawers, and hung them in the closet. Her hands moved automatically, muscle memory taking over. But no matter how much she tried to stay in the moment, that question kept circling her brain like background static. What happened after the doors opened? She paused, eyes closed, letting her memory take the wheel. It was like flipping through an old photo album, frame by frame. She started at the front door, how it always gave that soft, creaky groan when it opened into the tight little entryway. The walls were lined with dark wood paneling, and that lime green carpet, the one everyone swore was hideous but secretly loved, was threadbare in spots from years of kids running back and forth. To the left was the mirrored coat closet. The frosted glass above the front door let in soft light that hit the mirror just right, making the whole space look a little bigger than it was. Straight ahead were the white French doors. They always made the entryway feel like its own tiny box, one that Delaney, Kieran, True, Ezra, and Elias used to claim as their own little world. It wasn't big, but it was just the right size to feel like a secret clubhouse. No adults allowed, just them. Past those doors, the living room opened up like a stage. 5 tall windows lined the far wall, dressed in those dramatic gold and white curtains that always puddled at the floor like they were too fancy for their own good. A giant mirror stretched across the wall, and when the sunlight hit it right, the whole room shimmered like something out of a dream. In front of the windows sat the white love seat and matching couch, both with solid oak frames. The red velvet chairs flanked either side, the kind of fabric that changed color when you brushed your hand across it. She used to do that all the time as a kid, just sitting there mesmerized as the red shifted from dark wine to soft rose with one swipe. It felt like magic. Off to the left, a wooden archway led into the dining room. That table, it was massive, way too big for the space. Dark wood, heavy chairs, and that towering glass cabinet filled with china they never used. Honestly, it always looked like it belonged in a museum more than a home. But for her and True, the dining room wasn't for holidays. It was their hideout. They'd crawl under that giant table and make up entire worlds, pirate ships, secret bases, jungle expeditions. The thick rug muffled their laughter, and the table above them became their shelter from whatever was going on outside their bubble. It was safe under there. Familiar. Comforting. So, of course, that's where they went that night. The night Delaney couldn't quite forget, but not fully remember.
Next up in Bloodstone Origin, Part 2, Veil Markers. Thank you for listening with us at Gale of Tales. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. May these tales linger until the next gale arrives.